Shabbat Shalom, we're back. That was the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew. We're now going to read it in the English. Going to Matthew chapter 6, starting at verse 9. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Or so be it. And now the scripture for the broadcast, which is St. Matthew 24, verse 20. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So as we see here, we see Christ speaking of the Sabbath day prophetically to let us know the Sabbath day is still in effect for those who think that the Sabbath is no longer in effect or done away with. The reason why we are here in the broadcast is Friday Night Sabbath, to let everybody know that we do keep the Sabbath as Christ and the disciples kept the Sabbath. Also, part of coming out of Babylon is coming out of the Babylonian worships that this world has given us, like Sunday worship, the first day of the week, opposed to the Sabbath, which is what the scriptures command us to keep. And also, these are two times that Christ warned the disciples to pray that you're fleeing from destruction and escaping from the hands of your enemies. Pray that it be on the winter or on the Sabbath day, being that the winter, of course, as everybody can probably feel right now, is definitely a cold time. It's not a time that you would want to be looking to survive out in the elements, looking for food and water. Also the Sabbath day, because it is a day of resting. There's a day that we get together and gather. So this is the time the enemy would look to attack the true disciples of Christ, the remnant that the scriptures speak of, that keep the faith of Christ and the commandments of the Most High God. So being that it is a Sabbath day, we'd like to go into news, Bible prophecy, and current events, so that those that are, as you prepare for your Sabbath, you're ever so wary of the times that we are living in and how close we are to major prophetic events taking place, that we never want to get sidetracked or completely disconnect ourselves, even on the Sabbath day, of these things that are happening, watching and praying always. So 2015 ended definitely on a low note, to say the least, as far as what's going on in the world and a lot of things happening. And as 2016 started, there immediately were major events that took place. The first event was you had the greatest, or should I say the worst, opening day of the year for the stock market in 84 years. Happened on, I believe it was January 4th, on Monday. That was the first thing that took place. That was a major event and a shadow of things to come. Also, you had Barack Obama get up in front of the nation and with Congress, shedding crocodile tears and passing executive actions on gun control. Because as things start to happen in the earth, as these natural disasters continue to take effect, and they continue to push the narratives about ISIS and these groups that they've made up as a way to put you in fear, they're going to continue to take away your rights. And when the time comes, they want to have the laws on the books or in place to where they can come in and take over your guns so that you cannot fight back. So prepare to see a lot more executive actions passed this year on guns and more false flag events to take effect to justify the passing of these laws to be blamed on ISIS and domestic terrorist groups. Next big event you had a situation with Saudi Arabia and Iran, where a cleric from Iran and amongst others were killed and accused of plotting um, against the Saudi government, which has caused an uproar and tension, to say the least, friction between Saudi Arabia and Iran, along with all the allies of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and its allies have cut ties with Iran, and that particular tension there continues to increase. And we know America and Israel and the West are allies with Saudi Arabia, so this only makes matters worse when it comes to that particular prophecy, with the Medes being stirred up and them looking to fulfill Bible prophecy eventually when it comes to coming against Israel and America. You have, at the end of 2016, a lot of natural disasters taking effect. You had floods worldwide, and you had a plethora of different kind of disasters hitting America, between floods and fires and tornadoes, all type of crazy weather events happening there. And now in California, you actually have a natural gas leak, methane gas, that's leaking there in California, and has been leaking for quite some time. And there has been a state of emergency that's been declared. And the experts are telling people to get out of California, to get out of there, because of this methane gas leak. That it's so many environmental and natural disaster scenarios that can happen from just this particular incident, not to mention the fact that California is experiencing the worst drought ever in its history. So all of these things that we're seeing happening right now, of course, is prophetic and Bible prophecy, and it's not to be taken lightly or ignored, to know how serious things are and what times we are in. And it's important that we stay focused on the task at hand and continue to focus on the work that the Most High has laid out in front of us to do and to finish, and not get sidetracked by the cares of this life, the things that don't matter. But going into our first part of the news, we're going to start on activistpost.com. The article is "Stock Markets All Over the World Crash as We Begin 2016." This is January 5th, 2016. Okay. It says here, the first trading day of 2016 was full of chaos and panic. It started in Asia, where the Nikkei was down 582 points. Hong Kong was down 587 points, and Chinese markets experienced an emergency shutdown after the CSI 300 tumbled 7%. When European markets opened, the nightmare continued. The DAX was down 459 points, and European stocks overall had their worst start to a year ever. In the U.S., it looked like we were on course for a truly historic day as well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 467 points at one stage, but some very mysterious late-day buying activity helped trim the loss to just 276 points at the close of the market. The sudden market turmoil caught many by surprise, but it shouldn't have. The truth is that a whole host of leading indicators have been telling us that this is exactly what should be happening. The global financial crisis that began in 2015 is now accelerating, and my regular readers already know precisely what is coming next. The financial turmoil of the last 24 hours is making the headlines all over the globe. It began last night in China. Very bad manufacturing data and another troubling devaluation of the yuan sent Chinese stocks tumbling to a degree that we have not seen since last August. Probably been far, far worse, if not for a new circuit breaker that China recently implemented. Once the CSI 300 was down 7%, trading was completely shut down for the rest of the day. The following comes from USA Today. Under a new market circuit breaker rule in China, established last year, which is designed to slow down markets and halt panic in the event of moves of 5% or more, the CSI 300 A large company stock index in mainland China was halted for 15 minutes in mid-afternoon trading after diving more than 5%. But when shares headed lower once again just minutes after the initial trade halt, and losses for the day swelled to more than 7%, the new circuit breaker rules kicked in, prompting a shutdown of mainland China's stock market for the day, according to Bloomberg. After the first 15-minute halt, panic set in as Chinese traders rushed to get out of their trades before the 7% circuit breaker kicked in. This resulted in an absolutely chaotic 7 minutes as investors made a mad dash for the exits. The sell orders piled up fast on Monday at Shinwan Hongguan Group, China's fifth biggest brokerage by market value. China's CSI 300 tumbled 5%, triggering a 15-minute trading halt, and stock investors were scrambling to exit before getting locked in by a full-day suspension set to take effect at 7%. When the first halt was lifted, the market reaction was swift. It took just 7 minutes for losses to reach the limit as volumes surged to their highs of the day. Investors rushed to the door during the level 1 stage of the circuit breaker as they fretted the market would go down further, said William Wong, the head of sales trading at Shinwan Hongguan in Hong Kong. The financial carnage continued once the European markets opened. Markets were red all across the continent, and things were particularly bad in Germany. The DAX was down 459 points, and it is rapidly approaching the psychologically important 10,000 barrier. Overall, it was the worst start to a year that the European markets had ever experienced. When U.S. markets opened, unexpectedly, bad U.S. manufacturing data seemed to add fuel to the fire. Monday morning, we learned that our manufacturing sector is contracting at a pace that we haven't seen since the last recession. America's manufacturing sector shrank for the second straight month. The industry's key index, ISM, hit 48.2% in December, the lowest mark since June 2009. Anything below 50% is a contraction, and a month ago it hit 48.6%. The index has fallen for 6 straight months. The trend is certainly heading in a direction that would ring alarm bells, says Sam Bullard, senior economist at Wells Fargo. This is yet another sign that tells us that the U.S. economy has already entered the next recession. And what happens to the markets during a recession? They go down. In addition to the bad data that we got from the U.S. and China, there was another number that was also extremely troubling. South Korean exports have traditionally been considered a key leading indicator for the entire global economy. And on Monday, we learned that they were down a whopping 13.8% in December from a year earlier. One of the more reliable indicators of the global economy continues to confirm fears of a worldwide slowdown. South Korean exports, also referred to as the world's economic canary in the coal mine, fell 13.8% in December from a year earlier. This was a deterioration from the 4.8% decline in November, and it was much worse than the 11.7% decline expected by economists. The nothing is happening crowd may not be willing to admit it yet, but the truth is that a major global economic slowdown is already happening. The global markets today is perfectly consistent with the longer-term patterns that have been emerging over the past 6 months or so. In the weeks and months to come, things are going to get even worse. There will always be days when the markets are up, but don't let those days fool you into thinking that the crisis is over. In the Western world, we are so accustomed to 48-hour news cycles, and many of us seem to be incapable of focusing on trends that develop over longer periods of time. If I was going to put together a scenario for a global financial crisis for a textbook, what we have seen over the past 6 months or so would be perfect. Things are playing out exactly how they should be, and that means big trouble for the rest of 2016. But that doesn't mean that we have to live in fear. In fact, I just wrote an entire article entitled 2016, A Year for Living with No Fear. It is when times are at their worst that our character is put to the test. Some will respond to what happens in 2016 with courage and strength, and others will respond with fear and panic. As things start falling apart all around us this year, how will you respond? All right, and we will read that particular article at the end of our news segment. But this is how the year started, and If anybody has a long-term memory, they'll remember about the financial woes of 2015. It took place during the latter part of the summertime. It seems right after America um, passed the same-sex marriage across the 50 states through the Supreme Court that you had this financial, um, lows and all type of financial chaos happening from the midpoint of last year to the end, and then you had the Fed raise rates 2 weeks before the year was up, and they're saying they're going to continue to raise rates throughout this year. And so we know as they continue to raise rates and things continue to get worse in the financial market, it's going to lead to a huge crash and collapse, right? So this is how the year started. So for people to think, oh, okay, well, that was just one day, and it's just the first day of the year. Still a long time rest of the year, right? Well, let's take a look at our next article and see if this is just, just it's a coincidence that things happen bad like that the first day, and it's just maybe a glitch as far as things happening, just an anomaly. All right, we're still on activistpost.com. The next article is 7% crash causes emergency shutdown of stock markets in China for the second time in 4 days. So in 4 days, the first 4 days of the year, you've had 2 emergency shutdowns of stock markets in China. And of course, they want all eyes to be on China for and blame. So they have somebody to use as a scapegoat to say, well, the economy's problems are because of China, right? So they always look to China as the scapegoat to the world's financial problems. But nonetheless, let's read on here with the article. It says here, did you see what just happened in China? For the second time in 4 days, a massive stock market crash has caused an emergency shutdown of the markets in China. On both Monday and Thursday, trading was suspended for 15 minutes when the CSI 300 fell 5%. And on both days, the total decline very rapidly escalated to 7% once trading was reopened. Once a 7% drop happens, trading is automatically suspended for the rest of the day. And I think that's key, that they stop it at 7, of the number 7, and especially with the Most High and what that number means to him. But in China, they stop the trading for the rest of the day if it drops to 7 after they reopen when it falls to 5%. So it was suspended twice, second time in 1 week. It says, I guess that is one way to keep the stock market from crashing. You just don't let anyone trade. So you have to ask yourself, if they had allowed the trading to continue without stopping or shutting down the market, what would have happened? Would it have crashed? But again, this is like a circuit breaker or a buffer that China has in place so that it won't crash. Kind of like if you have a family member that's on life support, you have the breathing machine on them so they won't die. But should you take the life support off and they can't breathe on their own, then of course they will die. So this is China's life support system. It says, I guess that is one way to keep the stock market from crashing. You just don't let anyone trade. And of course, the panic in China is causing other markets to go haywire as well. As I write this, the Nikkei is down 324 points, and Hong Kong is down 572 points. The amazing thing is that trading was only open in China for about 15 total minutes tonight. Here is how CNBC described what just happened. China's stocks were suspended from all trade on Thursday after the CSI 300 tumbled more than 7% in early trade, triggering the market circuit breaker for a second time this week. That drop kicked stock markets across Asia, which were already wallowing with China's economic slowdown and its depreciating currency as well as falling oil prices. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite tumbled 7.32% by at the time of the halt, while the Shenzhen Composite plummeted 8.34%. The CSI 300, the benchmark index against which China's new circuit breakers are set, plunged 7.21%. If that index rises or falls 5%, the market halts all trade for 15 minutes. If it moves 7%, trading will be suspended for the rest of the day. In total, Thursday, China's shares only traded around 15 minutes. So the market was only open for 15 minutes of trading. 2 days in 1 week. They could only keep the markets open for 15 minutes to keep panic and chaos and hysteria from setting in the financial markets, the global financial markets. It says here, how will European and U.S. markets respond to the chaos in Asia when they open? That is a very good question. I think that everybody will be watching. And it's crazy because you have to ask yourself, why is this not being talked about in the news that this is happening? Like, nobody's talking about this. You know, it's like people will be talking about, you know, oh, the Miss Universe pageant and what Steve Harvey did, and Kardashian is doing. She's about to have a baby, and Caitlyn Jenner. Like, nobody's talking about these major issues that are happening that's going to affect the lives of every individual and what is the end game of all of this. Everybody is caught up in their own little bubble, focusing on what, you know, what is good for them. They're not looking at the big picture. And this is what this society has done, especially in America. It's put people into a matrix, into a sleep, into a zombie mode. You can only link in as far as your smartphone will take you. Whatever is going on with your smartphone is your life. And you have social media and things like that to keep you totally disconnected because you can just focus on yourself and promoting yourself in this virtual reality that they've given us. This is all it is virtual reality. It's not even reality anymore. It's what's really happening. And it says here, already the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down about 500 points for the year. The financial crisis that began in the second half of 2015 is now accelerating as we enter 2016, and nobody is quite sure what is going to happen next. One key to watch is what happens with the S&P 500. 2000 is kind of like a giant line in the sand on the S&P 500. On Wednesday, we saw the market hover around that psychologically important number, and there is a whole lot of resistance right there. If we break solidly through 2000 and start plunging toward 1900, that is going to break things wide open. The primary reason for the stock market crash in China on Thursday was another stunning devaluation of the yuan. This explanation from Zero Hedge is very helpful. Following the collapse of offshore yuan, the 5-year lows and decompression to record spreads to onshore yuan, the PBOC has stepped in and dramatically devalued the yuan fixed by 0.5% to 6.5646. This is the biggest devaluation since the August collapse. The yuan has erased what modest bounce gains it achieved intraday and is heading significantly lower once again. Dow futures are down 100 points on the news. PBOC fixes yuan at its weakest since March 2011, with the biggest devaluation since August. A massive devaluation of the yuan was also one of the primary reasons for the market turmoil that we saw back in August. The Chinese are playing games with their currency, and this is causing havoc in the global market. So again, with China devaluing its currency, because these are currency wars, my currency versus your currency, this country's currency versus another country's currency. So again, this is only setting the stage for when the financial catastrophe happens, for everybody to look to blame China for this collapse in the economy, which the market is way bigger than what China's doing. Right? We have to look into the fact of how many trillions and trillions of dollars that America has borrowed, how far in debt America is, along with other factors that have led the world to where it is right now with this financial crisis. But of course, you need a scapegoat, and in order to go to war, you need opposition. So this is what China will be when everything hits the fan. They'll be one of the many scapegoats. It says here, meanwhile, we have received some other very troubling news about the global economy over the past few days. The price of oil continues to collapse. As I write this, the price of U.S. oil is down to $33.26 a barrel. Those that follow my writing regularly already know that this is a really bad sign for the global economy. The Baltic Dry Index just hit another brand new all-time record low. Global trade is absolutely imploding, and this is having a devastating impact on China and other major exporting nations. U.S. manufacturing is contracting at the fastest pace that we have seen since the last recession. This is precisely what we would expect to see during the early stages of a new crisis, are also contracting at the fastest pace that we have seen since the last recession. It appears that the almighty U.S. consumer is not going to save the global economy after all. In 2015, trillions of dollars of stock market wealth was wiped out globally. Now this new global financial crisis is picking up speed. Many of the experts seem absolutely stunned by what is happening. But most of my readers are not surprised. That is because I have been breaking down the signs that have been warning us of this new crisis in excruciating details for months. The financial carnage that we have witnessed around the globe this week is simply a logical progression of what has already been happening. To be honest, though, even I have been stunned by what has happened in China this week. I can't say that I expected an emergency shutdown on the Chinese markets 2 times within the first four trading days of the year. Panic and fear are beginning to grip the global marketplace. And once that starts to happen, events become very difficult to predict. Let us hope that things settle down soon, but I wouldn't count on it. As I have said before, 2016 is a year when everything changes, and we are going to see things take place over the next 12 months that are going to shock the world. All right, and this is the last year of Obama's supposed, presidency. That he's a lame duck president, and here he is going for this push for gun confiscation and gun control, and that he said would be his biggest control. Because as things start to collapse, as things start to break down in a society, and as people lose everything and they start to lose it, and they're not able to eat and get water, they're not able to pay their bills, right? They can't keep warm, all these things that they can't do. And you have a breakdown in society where people now start to look to the government for answers and in frustration. And you have riots and things of this nature starting to take effect. Then, of course, as a government, you want to be able to have the ability to go in and have full control of the situation. And you can't have full control of the situation if the people are armed. So you need laws on the books. So when the collapse happens, you can come in and confiscate and seize weapons, just like what we saw happen in Katrina. Katrina happened, they were going door to door and taking people's guns under under martial law. So these are all signs and a shadow of things to come. Everything is in front of us and being shown. Do we recognize the signs, or are we in la la land? Do we recognize the signs, or are we only focused on our individual life? So while all of this is happening and the financial markets continue to become more and more unstable and chaotic, it seems that they have unlimited amount of money to put into technology. And the technology I'm speaking about is this beast technology, which will bring forth the mark of the beast because, again, once the collapse happens, you'll be introduced with a new way of buying and selling and the technology that comes with that buying and selling. And that's what we're going to go into now. This is what all these financial crises are leading to. Is leading to the mark of the beast. So let's take a look at some of the mark of the beast technology that continues to get more and more money pumped into it. As things get worse financially, there's unlimited money to pump into this technology, this beast. So we're on activistpost.com, and this article is titled DARPA's Top 3 Predictions for the Future, December 16, 2015. When it comes to predictions, perhaps no organization on the planet is better able to make dreams a reality than the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. Their mad science reputation already has given the world humanoid robots, drones, and the world's most advanced surveillance systems. But they are telling us that there is much timeline given by DARPA's Forward to the Future video messages seen below is 2045. The theorized date of the singularity popularized by futurist Ray Kurzweil in his 2006 book, The Singularity is Near, When Humans Transcend Biology. As the title implies, the singularity is the threshold where computer systems surpass and or augment both the intelligence and the biological functions of the human body. It's a process that already has begun, and DARPA is reinforcing their commitment to make it a reality by the target date. So the singularity is the merging of man and machine becoming one. And when you read Daniel chapter 2, it talks about the iron mingling itself with, meaning the technology would mingle itself with the human genome. The Mary clay is people, because of course we were made from the dust of the earth. But they shall not cleave together. It's like oil and water. You cannot merge man and machine together and have any form of organic life. You become an abomination. That's what's been created. It's basically what it means when it says they should not mingle together. Right, but this is what they're creating. And when they say 2045, understand that they are 50 years, 100 years, maybe even more so advanced than they tell us. So don't fall for their dates when they throw these dates out there. When they say, oh, by 2045, this is what will happen. They have the technology to do it now. Right? They throw 2045 out there because you'd be like, oh, by 2045, I'll be old and gray and, that's a long time from now. Almost 40 years, 30 years. They want you to not focus on the fact that they can do it now. It says with yearly known funding in the tens of billions of dollars, DARPA also receives untold funding for black budget secret projects, not even subjected to presidential and congressional oversight. So when they cast a vision of the future, it is worth paying attention. So what they're saying is that DARPA receives money that even the president and the U.S. government doesn't even know they're receiving. Of course, that's probably not true, that the government knows exactly what DARPA is getting. The government is that dark force that's giving DARPA all of this money. But it just goes to show you that what DARPA is doing is very sinister. Number 1, human-machine interface. This broad category includes new ways to communicate with the machines around us, even through emotions. Everything from self-driving vehicles to fully autonomous military and spacecraft to all of the computer systems at home and out in the world. Plus, of course, preparing for a world with robots at home and in the workplace. And they show us this in the movie, if you've seen it, Elysium, where the people make the robots and the robots rule over them. Same thing with the latest Total Recall that came out. Right? The creator has become slave to the createe, or that which has been created, which is how the elite view the Most High. That even though he's a creator, they should be over him. They should be subject to him, not the other way around. It says currently, digital implants are wearable devices, and wearable devices are beginning to give us some indication of what is in store, whether it is augmented reality applications, health monitoring, or the many other gadgets we choose to make our lives more efficient and dynamic. So you're starting to see this huge push for wearable tech. The Apple Watch, the Samsung now has a watch out. You know, they had the Google glasses, and now they're coming out with these virtual reality goggles you put on, like Oculus Rift. All these different companies coming out with gadgets that you can actually wear and put on. They make your life just that much more virtual, because it started with the phone to where it's something you hold. Then it comes to the point to where now you're going to wear the technology, which will eventually lead to you being conditioned into accepting the technology being embedded within your body. And of course, they already have these devices that can be input into your body, like pacemakers and things like that you can actually put in your body. And it just so happens in Obamacare, it is required that for those who have Obamacare, must have a Class 2 radio device implanted within their skin. Right, so they even have the laws in effect, so they can enforce it. They're going to enforce all of these things under law. Even though they're above the law, they're still going to put as much laws as they can into place, so that when you go and stand before a judge, you have no rights. They have full and total control to get you to bow down to their authority. There'll be nowhere to go in that situation. It says here, but for true communication and machine autonomy, artificial intelligence must reach a level equal to or surpassing that of humans. The latest research shows that this is happening faster than expected. Pam Milroy, an aerospace engineer, former astronaut, and current deputy director of DARPA's Tactical Technologies Office, foresees technologies that would enable machines to collaborate with humans as partners on tasks far more complex than those we can tackle today. And it's amazing how all of these companies like DARPA and NASA, they're all connected. They're all dealing with the demonic force and forces that are giving them this information. That's going to lead to a world of total surveillance, control, and singularity, or cyborgs and robots. A total satanic creation. The Most High created man in his image. Satan now is creating man after his image. An abomination. Number 2, mind control. This is not mind control as the receiver of information for the purpose to manipulate. Rather, this is a future where our minds control the world around us. This already has been achieved in medical applications such as prosthetics connected to the brain. But this is set to expand much further into the Internet of Things, which itself is advancing at warp speed. The IoT agenda is turning our everyday physical items into a replica of the internet by infusing them with computer intelligence. The next step would be to eliminate the various cumbersome remote control functions and enable gadgets to operate via mind control. So now they want to hook up computer chips to your brain so that you can have convenience to control things with your mind. And again, they put the movies out. You had Transcendence, you had Lawnmower Man, to where you've been hooked up to the machine and now you've been given superpowers. It's straight witchcraft and sorcery, wizardry. It says Justin Sanchez, a neuroscientist and program manager in DARPA's Biological Technologies Office, imagines a world where neurotechnologies could enable users to interact with their environment and other people by thought alone. So they'll market it to you. Could you imagine being able to always be connected to the internet, to be able to interact with your loved one without having to speak to them, through your mind, through telekinesis? You can achieve all of this if you just take our technology. The mark of the beast will be all of this in one. It'll be your buying and your spending and your selling. It'll be your access to go in and out of different buildings. You can become a true superhuman, transhuman, superhero. This is how this technology is being viewed now by people. They're looking for this technology to take them beyond the universe. Number 3, nanotech materials. The world of nanotechnology is likely to be transformative in a way that cannot be overstated. Artificial skin, spray-on solar cells, self-repairing architecture, invisibility cloaks, and a host of DNA-level medical applications will be able to build and rebuild human beings and the environment. So if you've seen the movie like Terminator, where they had the T-1000 Terminator and he got shot and a hole appeared in his body and then it repaired itself, this is just one example of nanotech, that they're saying that the human body will be able to repair itself by just injecting these small than the eye can see. And these machines will work together to fight disease and repair limbs. You get your arm shot off, the nanotechnology will repair your arm and you have a new arm eventually. These are just some of the things that they're showing us in these movies that they're looking to achieve, and maybe have already achieved some of these things. But this is what they're, that they marketed to you in movies, that it's cool. Then when the time comes to put these things in your body, you've already been conditioned to accept them. That this is what the world is coming to. That if you don't do it, you're behind the times. It says Stephanie Tompkins, a geologist and director of DARPA's Defense Sciences Office, envisions building substances from the atomic or molecular level up to create impossible materials with previously unattainable capabilities. Right, so this is what these mad scientists have been working on, and the technology that they're being funded with all this money for is to create this type of world, a world where they'll promise you'll never die, you'll never get sick, but you must bow down and serve the beast. Right, so that's DARPA's top 3 predictions for the future. And we are actually going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to pick back up with this Mark of the Beast technology. We are going to talk about how now they're looking to give people the option for designer babies, to where you can actually alter the DNA of your child, and then once your child is born, their DNA is set in permanent DNA that's been altered. Also, just more of the Mark of the Beast technology when we come back here in a moment after this commercial break. So y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you have serious health challenges or just want a full-body tune-up, then pay a visit to barakapah-naturally.org. Barakapah means bless and heal in Hebrew, and this is exactly what our holistic, natural approach to health will do for you. Your body has been designed by the Most High to correct and heal even the most severe illnesses using full-body cleansing and detox protocols in combination with whole foods, herbs, natural supplements, pure drinking water, and a stress-reducing lifestyle, positive thoughts, and prayer. We use tried and tested natural methods to identify and address any health challenge, using a simple, easy-to-follow, personalized health program designed specifically for you. We can offer an initial 1-hour health session followed by a full 28-day follow-up plan, which includes support by email, Skype, or telephone. Further ongoing support is available as required to assist you on your health journey. We can provide you with a health and lifestyle education that will position you on the road to excellent health. So if you've tried all the hype, medicines, doctors, and drugs, and failed to get the results you need, it's time to do something different. Why not use a proven natural healing program that has provided great results for many that have used it? We're not here to sell you supplements. We're here to show you how to get your health back and keep it. Go to barakapahnaturally.org, spelled www.barakapah-naturally, naturally.org.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, we're back, and we're going to pick back up where we left off, talking about this Mark of the Beast technology, what they have been developing and working on. And, we're living in that world now. Just take a look at your smart devices, whether it be your phone, your computer, even your washing machine. Now they have smart, washers and refrigerators, where all of these devices are now monitoring you and spying on you, and know your behavioral patterns. And all this information is actually relayed back to the manufacturer or corporation that has designed these products. So they're collecting a database and storing a database about you. And this is furthering their conquering of the human domain, to be able to, quicker implement the singularity of merging man and machine. So let's go to our next article here. The next article on activistpost.com we have is first GMO corn, then Frankenfish, and now get ready for designer babies. This is December 25th, 2015. We knew it was coming to this. The GMO revolution wasn't going to stop at our dinner table, but did we think it would happen so soon? The first week in December, delegates from the top 3 gene editing countries, China, the UK, and the US, met in Washington, D.C. for a symposium on the future of gene editing. Now, I just want to examine the fact that China, the UK, and the US met together. We know that America and United Kingdom are allies, but we know that China is supposed to be a enemy of America or an opposing force. So they make you think that China and America are at war, but yet they can get together when it comes to things like gene editing. To let you know that they're all together in of creation of this new world order. That through war they can create their new world order. Through population control they can bring forth the cyborgs and the singularity. So don't be fooled by the script and the story that they put in front of you about China and America are at war together. The leaders at the top are all together. America, China, Russia, all these leaders wine and dine together. They're not against each other. They need to make you think that there is a common enemy or opposing force so that you'll sign up for the war and be a patriot for your country. And if you die, you died for your country's cause. That's why they stage these events and cause these things to happen. It's the psychological, mind games that they play on the masses. But reading on here, it says, for those not familiar with the parlance, gene editing refers to the ability to alter the DNA of an embryo in a manner which affects the germline. The germline is defined as follows. In biology and genetics, the germline in a multicellular organism is that population of its bodily cells that are so differentiated or segregated that in the usual processes of reproduction they may pass on their genetic material to the progeny. In other words, what happens to the germline will affect the offspring and subsequent generation. So again, whenever you have changed the DNA of your child, then it will pass that DNA down to its children. And this is part of the nanotechnology that we just read in the previous article. The possibilities inherent in such manipulation are staggering. Not only could genetic diseases be removed from the developing embryo, but new and better attributes could be factored in. So, of course, they always give it to you as a great thing. You can get rid of diseases. Any type of generational disease that's passed down, we can eliminate that. If you want your child to be, have better attributes, maybe you in college or growing up in school weren't a great athlete. You want your child to be able to run faster, jump higher, look a certain type of way. Yeah, we can DNA alter your embryo to be that. So this is how they market it and proposition these things. It says mankind could face the possibility that crippling genetic diseases such as Tay-Sachs or Huntington disease could be forever banished, while a brave new crop of humans with enhanced intellectual abilities or enhanced musculature, for example, could be harvested. So basically, people would be harvested. It'd no longer be the Most High's creation. Right? You no longer be made according to how he feels you should be made, but more so how this world thinks you should be made. And they'll never tell you that these diseases come from our sins. So if there's a genetic or generational disease being passed down from generation to generation, it's because of sin, not because of some genetic defect. But, of course, in order to be able to complete their agenda, they must make you think otherwise. If there is an answer, it's not prayer, it's not putting down sin, it's come to our DNA lab and we can alter your DNA. It says here, the symposium was convened with some urgency after the disclosure that researchers in China had reported this past April that they had launched the first attempt to edit the DNA of human embryos. The Chinese project was undertaken to correct a rare and often fatal blood disorder called beta thalassemia. China's effort was followed by an application made in September by a British research group to edit human embryos for research purposes. Behind all this gene editing lies a new technology which works like the find and replace function on a word processor. The most popular in this new buffet of tools is the CRISPR-Cas9, which was invented by Dr. Jennifer Doudna. Dr. Doudna is a professor of chemistry and of molecular and cell biology at the University of California, Berkeley, and has also been an investigator with the Howard Hughes Medical Institute since 1997. The CRISPR-Cas9 works in the following manner. First, it locates the gene to be edited, then makes the desired alteration, either by deleting it or fixing it. Doudna has virtually revolutionized medicine with her invention, which is reportedly simple to use. The symposium was expected to produce a call for a moratorium on this research, while the ethical implications could be sorted out. Surprisingly, that is not what eventuated. The final formal statement by the International Summit on Human Gene Editing Organizing Committee, in fact, left the door open. The committee, which is comprised of 10 scientists and 2 bioethicists, called on the big 3 in a gene editing to take charge. We therefore call upon the national academies that co-hosted the summit, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences and U.S. National Academy of Medicine, the Royal Society, and the Chinese Academy of Sciences, to take the lead in creating an ongoing international forum to discuss potential clinical uses of gene editing, help inform decisions by national policymakers and others, formulate recommendations and guidelines, and promote coordination among nations. In a non-binding recommendation, the committee also called for the inhibition of gene editing on viable embryos, stating, if in the process of research early human embryos or germline cells undergo gene editing, the modified cells should not be used to establish a pregnancy. A conference which was attended by science heavyweights as well as by some family members with sick children resulted in an airing of some of the issues surrounding this new science. Harvard's George Church made a presentation which propounded a viewpoint that mitigated concerns about the fall out from gene editing. Dr. Church, who is a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, has written articles supporting germline editing and diminishing the possible repercussions. In a recent article in Nature, he wrote, human germline editing is not special with respect to permanence or consent. Replacing deleterious versions of genes with common ones is unlikely to lead to unforeseen effects and is probably reversible. Even if the editing was difficult to reverse, this would not be especially unsafe compared with other commonly inherited tasks. Right, so we have to examine just that statement in itself, that it's probably reversible, and there probably wouldn't be any problems doing this. So it's always these probables, and it's not that bad type of rhetoric that comes from these scientists who are all for this type of what they would call medicine. And we know that their medicine is sorcery, along with the technology. It says in 2005, Church launched a project called the Personal Genome Project. And this effort, which is billed as the world's only open access information on human genomic, environmental, and trait data, individuals are recruited to have their own genome analyzed and recorded. Church is also involved in doing gene editing in pigs for the purpose of removing problematic retroviruses which might stand to cause problems in using pig organs as replacement for failing human organs. So again, we have man playing God, man being the Most High. The Most High's creation wasn't made perfect enough, so now man is in to make it perfect. This is pretty much what they're the position they're holding. Mark Darnofsky of the Center for Genetics and Society disagrees with uh, with the notion that genetic editing is unlikely to result in unforeseen results. The medical arguments are tenuous and the possible social consequences are grave, said Darnofsky. In a subsequent article in The Guardian, Darnofsky wrote, the recognition that scientists alone can't decide whether to deploy this society-altering technology is perhaps the summit's most positive outcome. Already, more and more non-scientists are becoming aware of what's at stake for all of us and realizing that germline gene editing is a social and political matter, not just a scientific one. John Harris could not disagree more heartily. Harris, a professor of bioethics at the University of Manchester, believes that this technology provides the possibility for human enhancement on a grand scale and should be deployed as soon as the wrinkles are ironed out. Harris has stated, we all have an inescapable moral duty to continue a scientific investigation to the point at which we can make a rational choice. The laws governing gene editing are in many locations inexplicit to say the least. The UK permits licensed experiments on embryos up to 14 days, but not implantation in a woman. Some British scientists are agitating for a change in these laws. China's laws are considered to be ambiguous, as are South Africa's, Chile's, and Argentina's. The U.S. government has made it clear it will not fund any gene editing research which involves viable embryos. However, by adopting this policy without passing legislation banning the practice, the U.S. has inadvertently or otherwise opened the door for private labs to accommodate rich people who want to have designer babies. One wouldn't want to state this was the goal after all, would one? Designer babies for the wealthy, while the rest of us lump along with our genetic baggage. This begins to sound almost like the engineered societies that science fiction novels warned us about. The U.S. National Academy of Sciences and National Academy of Medicine have issued a press release announcing a data gathering meeting in February to study the ethical and social implications of gene editing. Right, so this links perfectly into their Agenda 21 program of 90% population reduction, that they can get rid of 90% of the useless eaters, of the have-nots, and the haves can be genetically modified and altered and changed so that the singularity can take place. Right. So this is again, this is the technology and the times that we are living in, and all of this is in the background as all the other events are taking place, and maybe other distractions that people are caught up with. This is the technology that they are producing and looking to make everyday life. All right, let's go to our next article here. ActivistPost.com. Company claims that brain transplants could bring back the dead by 2045. January 4th, 2016. There are a lot of outrageous claims being made within the halls of neuroscience and artificial intelligence. Whether exaggerations, wishful thinking, the dreams of the egocentric and megalomaniacal to be immortal, or just drumming up funding for a never-ending round of scientific investigation. The year 2045 seems to be cited as a target date. Ray Kurzweil popularized the notion of the singularity, the threshold when computing power would match or exceed the human brain and human biological systems. In his 2006 book, The Singularity is Near, when humans transcend biology. In that book and subsequent articles, he theorized that 2045 would be the far end of when we could expect full integration of human and machine that would create immortality. Right? So this is the immortality that they speak about, that Satan has promised them, but they'll never speak about the immortality that the Most High has promised us through believing in His Son, being baptized, and walking in the Spirit. It says, so far there have been indications that we are indeed proceeding in this direction. Beyond the gadgets we are all used to augment our intelligence, or beyond the gadgets we all use to augment our intelligence, each day seems to offer a new medical development that reads more like science fiction than reality. Just the other day, there was an article in the Seattle Times that a new type of flexible brain implant could enable the paralyzed to walk again. We have robotic prosthesis, humanoid robots, artificial human skin, and a range of nanotechnology applications used in medicine and the military that are quickly redefining life and nature itself. In fact, it's been proclaimed by scientists that the era of cyborgs has begun. So they'll never tell you or show you the scripture where Christ caused the lame to walk again and that we have the power to do the same miracles. Instead, they'll tell you, come get a brain implant and you can walk again. Come let us put our circuitry and our technology inside your body so that you can be whole. It says here are just a few of the articles that have sounded outlandish to those unfamiliar with the advancements being made, which put into context what some factions of science are reaching for by 2045. All right, the first article is robots to breed with each other and humans by 2045. Number 2, humans fully outsourced to robots by 2045. And number 3, DARPA's top 3 predictions for the future, visions of 2045, which we read that article earlier. While immortality is often laughed off as manifestly impossible and or never to be desired, the quest for immortality has been with the human race since its inception. Anyone who maintains their health or has a medical procedure in order to extend their own life, or those whose faith incorporates a life everlasting, engages in this pursuit. Now that recent advances make it a near-term likelihood, however, the ethical debates are ramping up. A new artificial intelligence company called Humai is pursuing 2 avenues to usher in immortality. Cryonics, which is the science of deep freezing the brain to preserve it for a transplant into another living vessel, and the even more radical notion of extracting a still living brain and putting it into a robotic body before the brain can die naturally. And they show us this in the movie, a couple movies. One movie, RoboCop 2, when the villain in the movie is actually killed in the beginning, and they keep him alive, and they take his brain, and they get it ready and make sure it stays, the brain stays alive to be transplanted into a robot. Right. So again, they've been conditioning us on these ideas. These aren't ideas they just came up with. They've had these ideas for centuries, but the technology is just now becoming available in the latter part of the times we're living in for them to be able to now make this science fiction a reality. This comes from their website. We want to transplant your brain into an elegantly designed bionic body called Humai. Your Humai will use a brain-computer interface to communicate with the sensory organs and limbs of your bionic body. Artificial intelligence will be integrated into synthetic organs so they can operate independently. Sensor technology will allow you to feel the essence of human experience. As your brain matures, genetic engineering will help fight the aging process, while advancements in nanotechnology will offer extensive tissue repair and regeneration, including the repair of individual brain cells, one molecule at a time. Nothing stated above is not already a success in the laboratory or being worked on extensively under multi-billion-dollar government projects like the U.S. Brain Initiative or the European Brain Project. And they have a video here that you can watch that says the following TEDx video outlines other paths that could see us transcend biology. It says the problem of immortality actually might not be how to get there, but what happens after. Aside from the complications of redefining consciousness, religion, and philosophy, there are some practical matters to consider. For example, Dr. Rebecca Roach and her research team at Oxford apparently seek to correct the inadequacies of criminal sentencing applied to the most heinous acts. Dr. Roach penned an article titled Enhanced Punishment: Can Technology Make Life Sentences Longer? This ethicist goes on to argue for the wonderful opportunities immortality could provide for making the condemned suffer eternally right here on a planet Earth. Seriously. This at least should illustrate why there needs to be open debate taking place as rapidly as possible for what type of world awaits us if immortality is truly on the horizon. Whether or not immortality is ever finally achieved, it should be evident that there are people at the highest levels of influence and power who are preparing for the strong possibility that it will happen soon. Are you? All right, so again, this technology has become, untapped and out of control. And this is exactly what was happening during the times of the flood, before the flood, leading up to the flood, and the reason why the Most High had to send the flood to destroy the earth and preserve Noah and his family because of what the fallen angels had taught mankind. And all the wicked abominations and technology that were in the earth then had to be destroyed. And the reason why when you read Genesis chapter 6 and it says that my spirit shall not always strive with man, and it talks about that man's life should be cut to 120 years. So ever since then, man through Satan has been looking for the ability to live an immortal life without dying. And this is what they've been promised, to be gods in this life and in the next life. And if you want to be a part of their world, is what they're saying, is that you are going to have to take this transition and transcend your biology. That the Most High did not make you good enough as you are. Let us perfect what he made an error in creating. All right, we got a couple more articles here. Let's move to the next one. Doing this is what leads up to the ability for them to put you in a corner to furthermore accept this technology and this new way of life that they're creating. ActivistPost.com, the name of this article is Soon Robots Will Have More Rights Than Humans. January 3rd, 2016. First, let me define my terms. When I use the word robot, I am not referring only to automated machines or cybernetic androids. For the purposes of this article, robot will refer to any artificially created entity or interface that is endowed with a high level of sentience and intelligence. A great example of this in popular operating system, Samantha from the Spike Jonze film Her, though this character is better utilized as a lens through which to assess the emotional dimensions of artificial intelligence. By invoking robots, I am primarily referring to artificial intelligence. To be sure, artificial intelligence already exists. It just doesn't look like what science fiction prognosticators of previous decades originally envisioned. Anytime you type into the Google search bar and the field is auto populated with suggestions, that is an example of algorithmic artificial intelligence. Anytime Siri responds to one of your absurdly facetious questions or legitimate queries, you are witnessing an embryonic form of artificial intelligence. We take it for granted, but these are extraordinary advances that would have seemed impossible to previous generations. In the future, the evolution of artificial intelligence will be so dramatic and rapid that we will scarcely be able to identify the point at which strong artificial intelligence surpasses human cognition, although some would argue that has already happened. Already, innovations like IBM's Watson are surpassing the limits of human intelligence and, in the case of a computer program called Eugene Goostman, passing the Turing test with flying colors. My purpose here is not to assess the evolution of artificial intelligence or even speculate on its future. For aspects of the latter, see my previous article for Anti-Media. In the current article, I want to pose and answer a specific question. Will robots and artificial intelligence entities of the future have more rights than flesh and blood humans? On its face, this is a specious question, riddled with esoteric trapdoors and loopholes. For one, human rights is already an emotional, complex, and legally obtuse topic. Human rights violations are rampant, and even in the world's most democratized, ostensibly benevolent societies, entire classes of humans lack basic rights, which in my opinion include health care, education, food, and water. In modern times, the primary reason for the continued dearth of human rights is the power of oligarchy, plutocracy, and corporatocracy. Wealth and corporate power trump individual human rights. The best example of this being codified into law is the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United. Another major looming manifestation of corporate rights superseding human rights is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, the unprecedentedly secretive trade agreement by which international corporate tribunals will be able to overrule the laws of national legislators. Let's return to the issues of robots, of sentient beings. It is my belief that initially robots will have no rights and the very idea will be laughed at. That's because the first few generations of weak artificial intelligence robots will not approximate human likeness. Currently, this is known as the uncanny valley, whereby something seems eerily close to human, such as the face of a robot sex doll, but feels wrong for some inexplicable reason, perhaps the fact that it's a robot sex doll. However, when artificial intelligence advances to even the early stages of the evolutionary paradigm shift Ray Kurzweil describes in The Singularity is Near, our ideas about what it is to be human and what constitutes intelligence will be forever altered. This will be further complicated by humans upgrading their own bodies and minds with cybernetic tools and transhumanist technologies. Such advances will blur the line between biological artificial intelligence. Within the next few decades, humans will almost certainly be augmenting themselves with AI, and we will see many cases in which the AI is used as a defense for a wide variety of crimes. Conversely, strong AI will eventually issue counter lawsuits against humans who they deem are demeaning and besmirching the name of artificial intelligence, presumably after dismantling artificial intelligence itself as moniker in favor of something more like sentient beings. And just to interject into this article, we've already been conditioned for this particular um, topic that this article is referring to through our movies, through our schools, through our entertainment like video games. All of these things are already conditioning us to have sympathy towards robots and artificial intelligence, that they're life too, and that they have rights. And there's all kind of movies again that show this. Just certain movies come to my mind like I, Robot, um, and that really challenge the mind of the weak minds of people, and put them in this mentality that this technology has rights, and that they're on the level of us as humans, as people. In an article entitled "Law Professors Argue Future Plausibility of Robots Earning Free Speech Rights," two law professors ponder the future First Amendment rights of strong artificial intelligence. They present a hypothetical case that illuminates the complexities of the subject. Imagine, for example, a Supreme Court case called Robots United that involves a First Amendment challenge to the government's regulation of speech by a robot with strong AI, where the regulation restricts speech on a matter of public concern based on the expression's content and the speaker's identity. Judy Jetson, a former Solicitor General of the United States now representing private parties, is the robot's lawyer and argues that the robot itself has free speech rights. Nobody in the courtroom laughs out loud, though some remain skeptical. The justices realize that precedent already affords free speech protection to the speech of artificial entities as well as to those who lack fully mature autonomous capacity. Indeed, the case law hinges more on pragmatism and on expression's informational value than on any philosophical purity about speakerhood or rights. This audience-focused perspective may lead the court to a remarkable conclusion. Speaker humaneness may be a sufficient but not logically essential part of its theoretical and doctrinal constitutional calculus. Judy Jetson and her robot client may prevail. Ultimately, the professors conclude that strong artificial intelligence will be granted First Amendment constitutional rights of personhood. It is this word, personhood, on which my argument hinges, as in the last couple of decades we have seen the nature of this word change, but not by a revolution of artificial intelligence or robots, but rather by globalist coup, spearheaded by multinational corporations. Thus far, it is corporate personhood that has changed the nature of humanity, not robots, though automation is no doubt irrevocably altering the global economy. To extrapolate even further, strong artificial intelligence, at least initially, is almost certain to be proprietary property owned by both corporations and government. If Citizens United serves as any example, corporatized entities created by humans can have just as many legal rights as biological flesh and blood humans. And these rights are emboldened and strengthened by the extraordinary wealth corporations wield and the power this grants them over lawmakers, and as a result, the rights of individual humans. To throw an incendiary hypothetical question your way, who is more likely to face criminal charges? A cop who vandalizes a Google office, steals sensitive information, and sells it to hackers, or a cop who guns down a black man? I submit to you that the answer is the former. In the future, the question may change to whether it is murder to shoot a sentient Amazon delivery drone out of the sky or a sentient military drone. I submit to you that it will be I submit to you that it will be, and that corporate and government owned artificial intelligence robots will enjoy more secure human rights than humans themselves. Because the AI, there will be more money. Because with AI, there will be more money. Proprietary source code, brand recognition, and possibly national security information on the line. And these are demonstrably more important to the powers that be than human rights. In a world in which machine automation is slowly but surely taking over the human workforce, and corporations continue to consolidate unprecedented global control, I can't reach any other conclusion but that in the near future, working class humans will rarely live as anything more than indentured servants, peasants in a new feudal order of corporate AI. All right, so again, whether or not we look at it for what it is or it's just seen as science fiction, but this is their plans for our future. And we're, closer than most people may think to this technology. Again, all of this is dealing with the mark of the beast. That in order to have one mind with the beast, you must totally be integrated in through this technology. And they make it seem like it'll be a utopia world. And with this article talking about robots having more rights than people, it just furthermore puts the pressure on those who are in the position to accept the mark of the beast. That without it, you have no rights. With it, you will have all the rights in the world. It furthermore puts you in that predicament on whether you will accept it or not. All right, and let's go now to our last article. And this comes off of endoftheamericandream.com. It says 2016, a year for living with no fear. No fear. January 4th, 2016. 2016 is just a few days old, and already there has been a tremendous amount of shaking. Stock markets all over the world are crashing. A huge earthquake just hit India. The middle portion of the United States is dealing with record flooding. Islamic terror continues to spread in the Middle East and elsewhere, and Saudi Arabia has suddenly cut off relations with Iran. Our world is becoming increasingly unstable, and I believe that this is just the beginning. In fact, I am fully convinced that 2016 is going to be an incredibly chaotic year. So does that mean that we should all cower in fear and try to find somewhere to hide? Not at all. My wife and I seek to live our lives in a constant state of shalom, which is the Hebrew word for peace. And we believe that 2016 is a year to be lived with no fear whatsoever. Yes, immensely great challenges are coming to this nation, but with great shaking comes great opportunity. In 2016, we believe that there will be incredible opportunities to be a light in the darkness. We are moving into a time when so many of the things that we have become preoccupied with will fall to the wayside, and we will start focusing on what really matters. Many of you have been preparing for the future for many years, and this is going to be the year when those preparations begin to pay off. When great challenges come, they reveal the true nature of our character. And as things fall apart all around us, people are going to be looking for leaders. To be a leader, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. People are going to be watching how we respond to the events that are going to be happening this year. And we need to decide right now whether we are going to respond with strength or with fear. If you want to be a leader, be ready to be a rock in the storm. When the waves start crashing all around you, that is the time to set your face like flint and choose not to be moved. Many are going to want to dig a hole and try to hide from the world, but those with courage are going to be running to the front lines instead. This is what we have been training for. This is what we have been preparing for. You were born for such a time as this. If you look back throughout history, almost all of the heroes that were greatly admired were birthed during times of great crisis. It is when times are the darkest that the light is needed the most. And the hard times that are coming are going to be crying out for strong men and women to arise. For years, watchmen on the wall, such as myself, have been relentlessly warning about what is coming. In fact, I have been sounding the alarm so loudly and for so long that some of my readers are probably sick of it. But the purpose has never been to create fear. I believe that there is hope in understanding what is happening, and I believe that there is hope in getting prepared. And the truth is that there is very much a spiritual dimension to all of this. For decades, God has been calling America to return to Him, but instead, this nation has been feverishly running the other direction. Now a day of reckoning is upon us, and we are going to experience the consequences of decades of very foolish decisions. In the legal world, there is always a pronouncement of guilt before a judgment is administered. And in 2015, I believe that we were very clearly shown our guilt in a myriad of ways. Some examples include the gay marriage Supreme Court decision, the Ashley Madison scandal, and the undercover Planned Parenthood video. I don't believe that it was any accident that those videos came out exactly when they did. The whole world got to see that we are murdering millions of babies, harvesting their body parts and organs, and selling those body parts and organs off to the highest bidder. Those body parts and organs are then used in bizarre scientific experiments, and the federal government is funding the entire thing. But instead of repenting, Congress just authorized hundreds of millions of dollars of funding for Planned Parenthood for the coming year. And the surveys have found that the American people approve of federal funding for Planned Parenthood by about a 2-to-1 margin. I believe that we were given one last chance to repent in 2015, but instead we choose to shake our fist at God. Now a great shaking is coming, and I believe that it has already started. Since September, we have seen a very highly unusual series of disasters in America. We have seen horrific flooding in Missouri, South Carolina, Texas, and Oregon. A nightmarish wave of wildfire starting at the end of the summer resulted in more acres being burned in this country than ever before. The state of Oklahoma set a brand new all-time record for earthquakes in a single year. A series of very unusual tornadoes just ripped through areas near Dallas. And much of California continues to suffer through the worst multi-year drought in the history of the state. When we look at the Bible, we see that there is often a progression to judgment. For example, frogs and lice were a couple of the early plagues that hit Egypt in the book of Exodus. But by the end of all, the firstborn of the Egyptians were dead. A similar pattern exists in the book of Revelation. Each shaking is intended to bring about repentance, and if there is no repentance, then more shakings come. And just to add in, these are the plagues that Revelation 18 speaks about when it talks about Babylon, which we know these plagues are what we are seeing happening to America, which is Babylon. It says we should be happy that shaking is coming to America, because without shaking, I don't believe that there would be any widespread repentance. God has been warning us about what is coming, but most of us don't want to listen. God sends warnings because he does not want us to fear. He knows everything that is going to happen in advance. He is in control, and he has a plan. And even in the midst of all the chaos and darkness that is beginning to engulf the world, God is raising up a remnant. This remnant is going to be the army of the last days. It will walk in faith and not in fear. It will boldly take action while others cower. This remnant is going to become what God always intended his people to be, and it is going to do the things that are going to shock the world. The greatest move of God and the greatest harvest of souls that the world has ever seen are coming. But just because we know what God is going to do in these last days does not mean that we automatically get to be a part of it. Now is a time to press in and seek him like never before. We need to pray that God will pour out his fire on our lives and equip us to be warriors of light in a world that is filled with darkness. Jesus is coming back for his bride, but right now we are not ready. Jesus deserves the greatest bride of all. He deserves a bride without spot or wrinkle, and that is madly and wildly and passionately in love with him. Without him, nothing is possible. But with his help, we can become the bride that we were always intended to be. In 2016, everything changes. Are you ready? All right, and the reason I wanted to read this article, not just because it's a good article and it speaks to a lot of motivation and hope, but it brings out some key points as we see things getting worse around us and things start to collapse, we have to be able to stand strong, and we can't operate in fear. And that's that's a key part, because as we go through these articles and things like that, I know for a lot of people they may get scared. It may be fearful to them, but the Most High has not given us the spirit of fear, and he is actually the only one that we should fear. And I want to read some scriptures here to go along with this article and what this whole point of not having fear and standing strong. One moment, let me get the scripture here. It's going to Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. And I'm going to start at verse 16. It says, and this is Christ speaking to the disciples. He said, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak. For it shall be given you in that same hour what ye shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. The disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? Fear them not, therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. What I tell you in darkness, that speak ye in light, and what ye hear in the ear upon the housetops. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore. Ye are all of more value than many sparrows. So, to bring out with reading these scriptures, going along with the article that we read, is that when we go into this type of information, a sense of fear sets in. All right, one moment. A sense of fear sets in. And as things collapse around us and the chaos ensues, we cannot allow fear and panic and chaos to engulf us. The main scripture I wanted to point out was when Christ said, fear them not which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So we've come to a point where people are more in fear of man and what man can do to them than what the Most High can do. We see the things like, the FEMA camps and, all the things they're doing for martial law and the mark of the... We see all of these things happening, and people are more scared of that and more in fear of that than actually being in fear of the Most High and being in obedience to him and walking according to the way he's commanded us to walk. And if that's us, we are totally out of order of how we're supposed to be. So in these last days, we have to stand bold and strong as these things happen. The same way Lot, during the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, as wicked as it was able to stand strong in all of this darkness to be a light to the world. As Christ said, to speak this doctrine upon the housetops, to be able to have the whole world hear this testimony that all these prophecies and things that are written in the Bible are coming to pass, and that this Bible is true for all the non-believers, and that the hour of the repentance is here, and that they either repent or perish. That's the reason why we were put here in this time, to be the 2 witnesses that the book of Revelation speaks about, to witness to the world. And we cannot be those 2 witnesses if we are in fear, or the minute something happens that we're running around like a chicken with our head cut off, and we have no type of rational thinking or rationale within ourselves, right? And we get our strength from the stories that we read in the scriptures, and we look at the prophets and the patriarchs and how bold and strong that they stood. Even in the face of death, they stood strong. So for us, even in the face of death, if that is what should happen, we should stand strong and confident in the Most High, knowing that the dead in Christ shall rise first, that they can kill the body, but they can't kill the soul, meaning that if you were to die by their hands in this world, that you shall go into Abraham's bosom and be in peace in paradise until the coming of our Lord, Yeshua Christ, whom the world calls Jesus, right? To know that they cannot kill the soul if we are in obedience to the Heavenly Father, right? So I just wanted to, go over those scriptures and bring out this particular this article because that is something that is noticed. Even those people who call themselves believers and can see and all of that is there's a level of fear. Just make sure that your fear is directed to the Heavenly Father, Him that can kill the body and the soul, and not towards man and whatever it is man has in store, because this has to be fulfilled. These things have to come to pass in order for Christ to return, right? But we have to believe that we will be saved out of this, right? So that's it for segment 1. We are going to go